8-year-old Andre locked in a filthy cupboard under the stairs. He was naked, malnourished, and lying in his own vomit and excrement, showing clear signs of severe abuse. Jacob was made to dig his own grave and lie in it, pretending to be dead. His younger brother, Andre, was then brought in and told that Jacob was dead. Andre was forced to throw dirt over his brother's grave, only to be manipulated into believing that Jacob could be brought back to life if he behaved. Clara was instructed by cult members to cut a piece of flesh from one of her sons. She chose Andre and cut a circular piece from his buttocks, which was then passed around for the cult members to consume. Clara was born on a chilly winter day, January 30th, 1977, under the sign of Aquarius. She grew up in the quaint city of Bono, nestled in the heart of the Czech Republic. The streets of Bono were filled with laughter and the warmth of family, and Clara's childhood was no different. She lived with her loving parents and two older sisters, Gabrielle and Katerina. Katerina, the eldest, was born on August 7, 1973, making her a fiery Leo. The three sisters shared a strong bond, often going on adventures together. They would take day trips to nearby parks or explore the wonders of their city during summer vacations. Clara was known for her energetic spirit. She loved sports and was always running around outside. Katerina, on the other hand, found joy in nature and spent hours lost in books about far-off lands and exciting tales. Religion played a significant role in their lives. The family attended church every Sunday without fail. The girls went to Sunday school where they learned about kindness and the importance of following the 10 Commandments. As they grew older, Clara and Katerina's interest in their religion deepened, almost to an extreme level. They began to believe they were special, chosen by God for a divine purpose. Clara often spoke about her beliefs with great passion. She was convinced she had been given extraordinary powers and that she was meant to accomplish something monumental. One day, in a moment of misguided zeal, Clara tried to suffocate Katerina with a pillow, believing she could bring her sister back to life. Thankfully, their parents intervened just in time to prevent any harm. As the girls continued their education, their unusual beliefs became more evident. They would tell their teachers about their divine visions and how they were destined for greatness. This raised alarm bells among adults who began to worry about their mental health. Social workers suspected that Clara and Katerina might be experiencing delusions or even signs of schizophrenia. They reached out to their mother, suggesting that the girls needed professional help. However, Clara and Katerina's mother dismissed these concerns outright. Instead of seeking help, she decided to pull her daughters out of school and transfer them elsewhere, hoping that a change of scenery would solve their problems. Unfortunately, without any treatment or guidance, Clara and Katerina's condition only worsened. Fast forward to the mid-1990s, Clara was now 18 years old. Strangely enough, she had become distant from her family. The once close sisters no longer spoke. Clara had cut ties with everyone she once loved. During this time, she met a man named Radek. Their relationship blossomed quickly. They fell in love and married within months. Before long, Clara became a mother herself. At just 20 years old, she welcomed her first son, Jacob, into the world. 2 years later came another boy named Andre. In those early days of motherhood, life seemed perfect for Clara and Radek. They settled into a cozy apartment where laughter echoed off the walls as their little boys played. Clara decided to pursue her education further by enrolling at university to study economics while balancing her new role as a mother. She managed to find a job as a secretary after graduating, a job that brought her satisfaction as she juggled work and family life. For a while, everything seemed just right in Clara's world. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly happy family lay shadows from her past that would soon resurface in unexpected ways. Clara's life was like a roller coaster, filled with ups and downs that seemed to spiral out of control. By the time she turned 26, it became clear that her struggles were far from over. The whispers in her mind grew louder, and she began to experience delusions again. Clara was convinced that she was on a divine mission from God, destined to achieve something monumental. Unfortunately, she started to believe that her marriage and her children were nothing but distractions from this important mission. Clara would often argue with her husband, Radek, telling him he was standing in the way of her destiny. Their home, once filled with laughter and love, turned into a battleground of heated arguments. Radek, overwhelmed by the constant conflict and unable to cope with Clara's delusions, finally decided he had enough and filed for divorce. At this point in the story, one might expect Clara to give up her children, letting them go with their father since she had labeled them as distractions. But Clara surprised everyone. She took her 2 boys and left Radek behind. In a sudden twist of fate, she reconnected with her sister Katerina after years of silence. This reunion marked the beginning of a new chapter, but it was one that would lead to chaos. Clara and Katerina moved into an apartment together with Clara's young children. At first, everything seemed perfect. Clara was a devoted mother, and Katerina took on the role of a loving aunt. The 2 boys, Jacob and Andre, thrived in this environment. Jacob was a lively child who loved basketball and dinosaurs. He even played the flute. Andre was equally energetic, enjoying hockey and spending time outdoors. Katerina worked as a manager at a local day center where she cared for many young children. Shortly after they settled in together, she helped Clara find a job at the same center. The sisters worked side by side while raising their boys together, creating a close-knit family that appeared happy and fulfilled. However, as time passed, Clara's mental health began to decline again. It became evident that her untreated schizophrenia was taking over her life. The voices in her head grew more persistent, pulling her deeper into confusion and delusion. Around the same time, Katerina introduced Clara to a new girl at the day center, a 13-year-old named Anishka, who went by Anna. Anna had come from Norway and had faced unimaginable hardships throughout her life. Her past was filled with sorrow. Both of her parents had died when she was very young. After losing them, Anna bounced between orphanages where she suffered terrible abuse. Things took an even darker turn when Anna fell into the hands of a pedophile ring where she endured horrific experiences of sexual abuse and torture. Tragically, Anna was forced to participate in the abuse of other children as well during this time. But Anna's story didn't end there. After enduring such trauma, she managed to escape from the clutches of the ring and found herself in safety. With help from an unknown doctor who specialized in treating children with traumatic pasts, Anna began her journey toward healing. However, just as hope began to shine for Anna, another shadow loomed over her future. She was diagnosed with leukemia. The doctors delivered heartbreaking news. It was unlikely that Anna would live past the age of 16. Desperate for a loving home, Anna longed to be adopted. When she arrived at the daycare center where Katerina worked as the manager, Katerina immediately felt a surge of compassion for the troubled girl. Recognizing Anna's need for care and support, Katerina approached her sister Clara with an idea. "Clara," she said gently, "this girl needs someone to look after her. Would you consider adopting Anna?" Clara's heart broke as she listened to Anna's harrowing story. Without hesitation, she agreed to adopt Anna, wanting to provide her with the love and stability she so desperately needed. And so began the formal process of adoption. By September 2005, Anna officially moved in with Clara, Katerina, and Clara's 2 boys, Jacob and Andre. Their family now consisted of 5 members: Clara, Katerina, Jacob, Andre, and Anna. It was a new beginning for Anna, who was starting chemotherapy treatment for her leukemia. However, there was something strange about how things were unfolding. Despite being Anna's legal guardian, Clara was never allowed to take her to the hospital for treatments. Instead, it was always Katerina who accompanied Anna to her appointments. This raised eyebrows. Why was Clara excluded from such an important part of Anna's care? Adding to the mystery was the doctor treating Anna. This doctor communicated only through text messages. Clara and the doctor never met face to face. It seemed odd that a medical professional would rely solely on texts to guide a guardian in caring for a sick child. The messages from this mysterious doctor became increasingly unsettling. He instructed Clara on how to treat Anna's emotional wounds from her traumatic past, suggesting that Anna needed an abundance of love and praise. Clara was told to shower Anna with compliments every day and buy her gifts almost daily. But it didn't stop there. The doctor's instructions took a bizarre turn. He demanded that Clara give Anna full-body massages every night as part of her treatment. These massages were not only extensive but also included intimate areas of Anna's body. It was shocking that Clara agreed to follow such disturbing advice. As time went on, these massages could last up to 8 hours. Friends of Clara began noticing strange behavior from Anna. She often stared blankly at the floor and avoided eye contact with others. Despite being perfectly capable of walking, Anna insisted that Clara carry her everywhere. Anna's behavior became increasingly demanding. If she didn't get what she wanted, she would throw tantrums that escalated quickly. There were moments when she threatened to harm herself, once holding a knife while threatening to jump out of a window and another time nearly jumping in front of an oncoming train. Adding tension to the household dynamics was Anna's growing animosity towards Jacob and Andre, who were just children themselves at 8 and 6 years old. Despite their innocence and kindness towards her, Anna claimed they were bullying her simply because they received attention from Clara. Incredibly, Clara began siding with Anna against her own children. This shift in loyalty left everyone confused and hurt. It didn't make sense that a mother would turn against her own boys in favor of a girl who had just entered their lives. Clara's life took a dark turn as she became increasingly obsessed with Anna, the girl who had just entered her life. It was bewildering to everyone around her. Why was she so devoted to this mysterious 13-year-old girl? Clara began to neglect her own children, Jacob and Andre, pouring all her energy and attention into Anna. As Clara focused on Anna, she started to let herself go. She stopped eating properly, neglected her hygiene, and lost a significant amount of weight. Her once vibrant appearance faded, leaving her looking disheveled and worn out. Sleep eluded her. She was only getting about 3 hours a night. Clara withdrew from friends and family, becoming a mere shadow of her former self, all because of Anna. There was something unsettling about Anna as well. While she displayed childish behavior, throwing tantrums like a typical teenager, there were moments when she would switch to being cold and calculating. Her demeanor could shift in an instant, revealing a manipulative side that seemed far beyond her years. When Anna doodled, the drawings often reflected themes that felt too mature for someone her age. People noticed that her eyes held an unsettling depth. They seemed to tell stories of experiences far beyond what a 13-year-old should have faced. What no one realized at the time was that Anna was not who she claimed to be. In a shocking twist, it was revealed that Anna was actually a 33-year-old woman named Barbara Skrylova. Yes, you heard that right. Anna was not a child at all but an adult posing as one in a desperate attempt to be adopted by Clara. How could this deception go unnoticed? It felt like something out of a movie, a chilling reality that echoed the plot of Orphan, where an adult woman masquerades as a child and wreaks havoc on a family. To understand how Barbara ended up in this situation, we need to delve into her past. Born on July 20th, 1974, Barbara grew up in the Czech Republic in an environment filled with neglect. Her mother struggled with alcoholism, while her father was largely absent throughout her childhood. This lack of care left Barbara feeling alone and unwanted. As she entered her teenage years, Barbara's mental health began to deteriorate. She exhibited signs of various mental health conditions, including dissociative personality disorder and schizophrenia. Additionally, she suffered from hypopituitarism, a rare medical condition affecting the pituitary gland's ability to produce growth hormones. This condition stunted Barbara's growth, allowing her to maintain a childlike appearance well into adulthood. These factors combined created a perfect storm for deception. Barbara learned how to manipulate those around her by bending the truth and creating false identities. She had previously escaped from psychiatric facilities and had even convinced families that she was an orphan in need of care. This pattern of lies became a way for her to navigate through life. Now, as Clara continued to spiral deeper into obsession with Anna, unaware that this girl was actually a woman with a troubled past, the stage was set for chaos to unfold within their home. The dynamics between Clara's children and Anna became increasingly strained, leading to bizarre behaviors and dangerous situations that would soon come to light. As Barbara transitioned into her teenage years and eventually adulthood, she continued to look much younger than her actual age. This childlike appearance led adults to treat her as if she were still a child, which filled Barbara with frustration. She resented being seen as helpless and decided to turn her condition into a tool for revenge against those who underestimated her. Barbara learned to act like a child, using this facade to manipulate the adults around her. Because she was an adult, she possessed skills that allowed her to deceive people more effectively than a typical child could. She would charm adults into believing she was a vulnerable girl in need of care, and they would welcome her into their homes, offering food, money, and attention. It was a twisted game for Barbara, who thrived on the attention she received. But even with all the manipulation, Barbara felt it wasn't enough. In her later teenage years, she concocted an elaborate story to trick a family into thinking she was a young orphan in need of adoption. This family took her in and began the adoption process, mirroring the very scheme she was currently executing with Clara. However, the truth eventually came out, and they discovered that Barbara was not a child at all. As a result, the adoption fell through. When her deception was uncovered, Barbara was committed to a psychiatric facility for treatment. But this did not deter her. She managed to escape and soon tried the same trick again. She approached another family with her sob story about being an orphan in need of love and care. Once again, they believed her and began the adoption process. It was astonishing that Barbara had successfully pulled off this ruse multiple times. However, just like before, it wasn't long before the truth came out. This time, Barbara's own parents and authorities stepped in and had her committed again to a psychiatric facility for further treatment. She would spend several years there until her late 20s when doctors finally deemed her fit for release. By 2003 or 2004, as Barbara approached 30 years old, she enrolled at university to study music and performing arts. During this time, she crossed paths with Katerina, Clara's sister, who played an important role in Barbara's life. Katerina was only a few years younger than Barbara, and they quickly formed a friendship. Katerina worked as a manager at a daycare center, and soon after meeting Katerina, Barbara also got a job at the same center. It's important to note that Barbara started working there before Clara arrived on the scene. Clara would only meet Barbara later when she was posing as Anna. At first glance, everything seemed normal at the daycare center. But inside Barbara's mind brewed a desire to reclaim the attention she craved by acting like a child once more. She knew from past experiences that children naturally received more affection from adults, a fact that fueled her obsession with being seen as one of them. Determined not to get caught this time around, Barbara devised a plan and confided in Katerina about her intentions. "Hey," she said casually one day, "we're friends, right? Can you help me change my identity? I want to become a child again." Most people would have been taken aback by such an unusual request and would likely refuse to help. But Katerina surprised everyone by agreeing to assist Barbara in this bizarre endeavor. As Barbara began to disappear from her job at the daycare center, her colleagues were left puzzled about her sudden absence. In secret, she and Katerina worked together to transform Barbara into a more childlike version of herself. The lengths she went to were extreme. Barbara starved herself, losing over half her body weight in a desperate attempt to appear younger. She changed her wardrobe, opting for bright colors and cartoon-themed clothing that would make her look like a child. To further enhance her appearance, Barbara underwent breast reduction surgery and liposuction. After months of recovery from these surgeries, she was ready to re-enter society, now presenting herself as a 13-year-old girl named Anishka. The original plan was for Anishka to simply blend in at the daycare center as another child. However, Barbara had grander ambitions. She wanted to be adopted. Katerina suggested that Clara, her sister, would be the perfect person to adopt Anishka. This was around the time Clara started working at the daycare center, and it was then that Katerina and Barbara concocted a fake backstory for Anishka. They fabricated a tale of tragedy, claiming that Anishka's parents had died, that she had suffered abuse in orphanages, and even that she had been sold into a pedophile ring. They included the detail that Anishka was battling cancer to elicit sympathy from Clara. This entire backstory was a lie designed to make Clara feel sorry for Anishka and push her towards adoption. Because of this deception, Clara was never allowed to take Anna for any cancer treatments, because Anna didn't actually have cancer at all. Instead, after these supposed treatments, Anna would return home wrapped in a blanket with tubes attached to her body, creating the illusion of someone recovering from chemotherapy. The mysterious doctor who had been sending Clara text messages with instructions on how to care for Anna remained an enigma. Speculation arose that this doctor could have been Barbara herself or even Katerina, but it was unclear who was truly behind this facade. The instructions became increasingly bizarre. Clara was told to give Anna full-body massages every night, including intimate areas, under the guise of helping her recover from trauma. The motivations behind all this manipulation are complex. For Barbara, it seemed that the need for attention drove her actions. Perhaps stemming from childhood neglect, she sought out parental figures through adoption schemes. But what did Katerina gain from helping Barbara? That question remained unanswered. Despite the glaring inconsistencies in Anna's story, such as how someone who looked like an adult could be mistaken for a child, Clara appeared oblivious to the truth. It's perplexing how she could accept Anna's identity without question, especially given Barbara's adult features that often gave away her true age. By the summer of 2006, Anna had been living with Clara and Katerina for about a year. The ruse of Anna being a 13-year-old girl had been successfully maintained during this time. However, Clara was now navigating the complex legal process of adopting Anna, a process complicated by the fact that Anna wasn't a real person. To bypass legal hurdles, Katerina and Barbara needed to create fake identification documents since Anna lacked any official records like a birth certificate or passport. This deceitful act only deepened the web of lies they were weaving. As they continued their charade, it became clear that this case was spiraling into something far more sinister than anyone could have anticipated. To complete the elaborate scheme, Barbara and Katerina knew they needed to create fake medical records that would support Anna's fabricated cancer diagnosis. Somehow, they managed to pull this off, crafting documents that would convince anyone who saw them. Finally, Anna had to undergo a medical examination to verify her age. While it's unclear if this was a standard procedure for adoption, it became a crucial step in their plan. You might think this was the moment when Barbara would be caught, given that she was actually 33 years old and not 13. But Katerina had a clever plan. She had a friend with a 13-year-old daughter and convinced her to let them borrow her child for the examination. This innocent girl underwent the medical checkup, and the results confirmed that Anna was indeed 13 years old. Incredibly, Barbara and Katerina had successfully deceived both the legal and medical systems. With Anna's age verified, Clara was legally allowed to adopt her. Barbara received a birth certificate with a fabricated birthday of December 2, 1993, and she was officially recognized as Anishka. Now, we must turn our attention back to Jacob and Andre, Clara's two sons. As Barbara ingrained herself deeper into their family, she began to manipulate Clara against her own children. Clara's neglect became evident as Jacob and Andre acted out in response to the lack of attention they were receiving. Their misbehavior was understandable. They were feeling abandoned in favor of Anna. Unfortunately, this behavior played right into Barbara's hands. She convinced Clara that Jacob and Andre were bullying her, reinforcing the idea that they were mean and unkind. Clara, seeing her sons misbehave, began to believe Anna's claims and started punishing Jacob and Andre more severely. One day, Anna approached Clara with a suggestion on how to discipline her sons better. It was shocking that Clara would take advice from a 13-year-old girl about parenting, but she was so wrapped up in Anna's manipulation that she listened intently. Anna mentioned that her doctor, the one supposedly treating her for cancer, was also an expert in child discipline. Soon enough, the mysterious doctor began messaging Clara again with advice on how to manage her children's behavior. The doctor insisted that to make Anna feel more at home, Clara needed to stop Jacob and Andre from bullying her. To do this effectively, the doctor recommended severe punishments for the boys. This is where the story takes a deeply troubling turn. The doctor advised Clara to cut off all external influences from Jacob and Andre's lives. Following this advice, Clara pulled her sons out of school and began homeschooling them. They were also forbidden from seeing any family members, no visits from their father or grandparents, whom they were very close to. But the punishments didn't stop there. The doctor suggested physical discipline as well. Clara began hitting her sons with objects like wooden spoons or belt buckles whenever they misbehaved. It wasn't just physical punishment, psychological torment became part of their daily lives too. As the situation escalated in this toxic environment filled with manipulation and abuse, it became increasingly clear that Barbara's deception was leading everyone down a dark path. The situation for Jacob and Andre grew increasingly dire under Clara's misguided parenting. The punishments they faced were horrific. The boys were made to kneel in one spot for hours on end, unable to move. At times, they were locked in a dark cupboard with no light, no food, and no access to a bathroom. They were forced to sleep on the cold concrete floor without a bed, enduring conditions that no child should ever have to face. It was heart-wrenching to think about the suffering they endured. Before Anna entered their lives, Clara had been a loving and caring mother. It was shocking to see how drastically she had changed, all under the influence of a mysterious doctor who communicated only through text messages and a 13-year-old girl she had just adopted. Clara's transformation was bewildering, especially considering the well-being of her own children. But there was more to this story than just Clara's troubling behavior. It is suspected that a cult was somehow involved in the way Jacob and Andre were being treated. The leader of this cult was none other than Barbara's biological father, Joseph. Yes, Barbara's dad was at the helm of this organization, which went by the name of the Grail Movement. The Grail Movement is an international religious group that originated in Germany during the 1930s. Over time, it splintered into many different factions, each with its own beliefs and practices. Joseph led one of these factions, and while some groups within the Grail Movement may have benign intentions, others have been linked to disturbing behaviors. For example, in 2008, a leader from another faction of the Grail Movement was arrested for keeping female followers as slaves. He subjected them to physical and psychological abuse, and the conditions were so terrible that one woman tragically lost her life. This incident highlighted just how dangerous some factions of this movement could be. In the early 2000s, Joseph rose to prominence as a leader within his faction of the Grail Movement based in the Czech Republic. Although the exact number of followers he had is unclear, it is known that his group held some extreme beliefs. They taught that individuals could earn their way into heaven through good deeds, but also believed that these good deeds absolved them from any sins they committed. This warped ideology allowed followers to justify criminal behavior and abuse as long as they believed it served a greater purpose. A particularly troubling aspect of this cult was its harsh stance on child discipline. They believed that children needed to be raised with strict control and severe punishment to grow into upstanding citizens. This philosophy undoubtedly influenced Barbara's actions toward Jacob and Andre. Given her father's role as the cult leader, it's no surprise that Barbara was also involved in this organization. Katerina soon joined as well after meeting Barbara. She too became entangled in this dangerous belief system. In 2006, Barbara, now known as Anna, had fully embedded herself into Clara's life. With a manipulative agenda, Barbara and Katerina decided it was time for Clara to join their cult. They believed that by bringing Clara into the fold, they could further brainwash her into accepting their twisted beliefs. The cult was complicit in the ruse that Barbara was merely a 13-year-old girl named Anna. As Clara became more involved with the cult, she started receiving lessons on how to discipline her two sons, Jacob and Andre. Unfortunately, this led to even harsher treatment for the boys. In August 2006, Clara received a chilling message from the mysterious doctor instructing her to take Jacob and Andre to a re-education camp located in a secluded cottage far from civilization. This camp was run by members of the cult. At the cottage were 3 cult members, 29-year-old Jan Tarek, 26-year-old Hanna Basova, and 23-year-old Jan Skrila, Barbara's younger brother. Although Barbara's father, the cult leader, wasn't present at the cottage, it was clear he was aware of the events unfolding. Upon arriving at the cottage with her sons, Clara was told to abandon her role as a mother and instead view herself as a tutor. The boys were then taken away by the cult members and placed in dog cages so small that neither could stand up. They were forced to remain in these cages at all times except for when they were taken out for reprogramming. They slept, ate, and even went to the bathroom inside these cages, completely isolated from one another despite being adjacent. When they were let out of their cages, Jacob and Andre were sometimes restrained with collars like animals. They were tied up around the house to prevent any chance of escape. The boys were barely fed, leaving them weak and unable to resist their captors. At just 7 and 9 years old, they faced severe punishments if they attempted to communicate or escape. The so-called reprogramming sessions were even more horrific. The boys were forced to read vulgar texts aloud and memorize them while being punished for doing so. Over the following days and weeks, they endured brutal treatment. They had bags placed over their heads and were beaten with belt buckles and bamboo poles. Sharp forks scratched their skin, cigarettes were pressed into their flesh, and their heads were repeatedly submerged in buckets of water. Boiling water was poured over them as well. It is unimaginable that such cruelty could be inflicted upon innocent children. The reality of their suffering is heartbreaking and difficult to comprehend. Clara had once been a loving mother before Anna entered her life. Now she was following orders that led her children into unimaginable torment. The transformation in Clara's character was shocking, especially considering she had been manipulated by a mysterious doctor who only communicated through text messages and a 13-year-old girl who was actually an adult. As the situation escalated into pure horror at the cottage, it became evident that this case involved not just a dysfunctional family but also a sinister cult mentality that justified abuse in the name of discipline. The cruel and sadistic punishments inflicted upon Jacob and Andre were carried out not only by the 3 cult members at the cottage but also by Anna, formerly known as Barbara, Katerina, and shockingly, Clara herself. It was unfathomable that Clara had been convinced and brainwashed into torturing her own children. No matter the circumstances, a mother should never be able to justify abusing her own kids. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the physical abuse was accompanied by severe psychological torment. The boys were subjected to loud industrial music played at high volumes all day, reminiscent of other notorious cases of psychological torture. They were told there were numerous cult members hiding in the house who wanted to harm them. This was a lie meant to instill fear. While there were indeed people in the house who wished them harm, the boys were manipulated into believing they were surrounded by even more threats. To further terrorize Jacob and Andre, Barbara would sometimes hold Andre's head under a bucket of water for extended periods, nearly drowning him. The cult members aimed to turn the brothers against each other, instructing them to harm one another. On one horrifying occasion, Jacob was forced to dig his own grave and lie in it, pretending to be dead. Then Andre was brought in and shown his brother dead, only to be told he could bring Jacob back to life if he behaved. The most disturbing part of this nightmare came when Clara was instructed by the cult members that in order to truly reprogram her children into becoming good human beings, she needed to cut a piece of flesh from one of them. This grotesque act was intended to be shared among the cult members, who would consume it as part of their twisted rituals. Incredibly, Clara agreed to this horrific demand. Initially hesitant and needing assistance from the cult members, she ultimately chose her younger son Andre as the victim. She cut a circular piece of flesh from Andre's buttocks, which was then passed around for each cult member to consume. There are even rumors that both boys were forced to eat some of their own flesh during this ordeal. When you consider that Andre was alive when this happened, without any pain medication or anesthesia, it is almost too much to bear. The reality of such cruelty is heartbreaking and difficult to comprehend. For approximately 3 months, Jacob and Andre remained trapped in this living nightmare. After this time, the other cult members informed Clara that she was no longer needed at the cottage and could leave with Anna, Barbara. Clara and Anna then left the cottage together, embarking on a search for a new home, one that would accommodate their growing needs while still shrouded in darkness from their past actions. After leaving the cottage, Clara and Anna found a new house in a town called Carvina. The pronunciation of the town's name seemed to vary everywhere, but what was certain was that the cult funded this new home. In this house, Anna received her own beautifully decorated room filled with toys and clothes, as she was considered the chosen one. Meanwhile, Clara's own children, Jacob and Andre, remained locked away in cages back at the cottage. About a month later, after 4 months of torment in the cottage, it was decided that Andre would be allowed to return home to Clara. However, Jacob was to stay behind. The reasoning for this decision was unclear. Perhaps they believed Jacob needed more reprogramming. While it might seem like a relief that one boy was escaping the torment, Andre's situation would not improve upon his return. As soon as Andre came home, he was sent to the cupboard under the stairs, where he would remain in darkness without any light or comfort. He had no bed, blankets, or pillows, only the hard floor to sleep on. The only form of hygiene he received was a bucket of cold water thrown over him. With no access to a toilet, he had to urinate and defecate in the cramped space, which was never cleaned. If he vomited from his horrific surroundings, he might have been forced to consume his own vomit. To prevent any chance of escape, even though it seemed impossible for him to escape from a locked cupboard, Andre's wrists and ankles were bound together. He often found himself left naked and unable to move. This cruel treatment lasted for 5 long months. You may wonder when this nightmare would finally end. Fortunately, a stroke of good fortune was about to occur. On May 7, 2007, a man named Edward was at home in Carvina trying to set up a baby monitor for the first time. Struggling with the technology, he suddenly saw something shocking on the screen, a video of a child who was not his own. Instead, it showed a naked young boy tied up on a concrete floor. Initially confused by what he saw, Edward thought there must be something wrong with his monitor. He dismissed it as a malfunction and went about his day. However, throughout the day, he couldn't shake off the image of that child lying helplessly on the concrete floor. Concerned and curious, he told his wife about what he had seen earlier. Later that day, they both turned on the monitor again and were horrified to see the same child appearing on their screen once more. This time, they watched as the child roamed around the small concrete room and appeared to be eating something off the floor. When Edward and his wife saw the disturbing images on their baby monitor, they became increasingly alarmed. It dawned on them that what they were witnessing was a live feed from somewhere nearby, and they immediately called the police. The officers arrived quickly and reviewed the footage, realizing that the signal must be coming from a house in close proximity. They could hear music playing in the background, which was consistent with the cult's practice of using music as a form of punishment. The police stepped outside Edward's home to listen for the music and traced it to a neighboring house directly across the street. When they knocked on the door, a woman in her 30s answered. The officers explained they were looking for a child, but she denied any knowledge of one, insisting, "No children here." Inside his home, Edward could still hear the police officer's voice on his monitor, confirming they were at the right location. Sensing something was amiss, the police forced their way into the house. The woman who had opened the door was Clara Maurova. As they searched for the child, they discovered a locked cupboard under the stairs, which raised immediate suspicion. The officers attempted to break open the door when suddenly, a young girl named Anna emerged. She began screaming, "Mama! Mama! What's happening?" and rushed to grab onto the officers' legs, desperately trying to stop them from entering the cupboard. The officers mistakenly believed Anna was another child in need of rescue and didn't realize she was actually an adult trying to prevent them from uncovering the truth. They managed to hold her back and eventually broke the padlock on the cupboard under the stairs. What they found inside was horrifying. Andre was naked, tied up, malnourished, and lying in his own vomit and excrement. He had endured months of mistreatment but was finally rescued. Andre was immediately taken to safety while Clara was arrested on the spot. Katerina was also present at the house and was arrested as well. The police initially believed that Barbara, who had been posing as Anna, was just a 13-year-old girl and therefore did not arrest her. Instead, she was taken to a children's shelter along with Andrew. After Andrew's rescue, authorities soon learned he had an older brother named Jacob. The search for Jacob revealed that he was still at the cottage with other cult members. Interestingly, Jacob had been allowed to attend public school during this time, which seemed odd given that one of the cult's rules was to avoid outside influences. This decision made it easier for authorities to track him down. Once both Andre and Jacob were in custody, it became clear that they were in terrible condition. They were covered in scars, cuts, and bruises. Their skin appeared pale due to malnourishment. Both boys had suffered serious psychological effects from their ordeal. It was discovered that they exhibited mood and developmental disorders resulting from their treatment, lack of food, sleep deprivation, and being kept in darkness for extended periods. When rescued, Andrej was 8 years old and Jacob 10. Tragically, they struggled to function like typical children their age. They needed to be retaught basic skills such as how to sleep in a bed or use utensils. The process of rehabilitation began slowly as both boys started sharing their experiences with authorities. Their bravery in recounting their trauma revealed the full extent of abuse they had endured. The cult had threatened them with severe consequences if they ever spoke about what happened. They were told that if they did, their lives would be in danger. Fortunately, after some time adjusting to their new circumstances, both boys began attending school again and started living more normal lives. They were eventually reunited with their father and grandparents, a heartwarming development amid such darkness. After being rescued, Anna, also known as Barbara, was placed under the protection of a children's shelter alongside Andre and Jacob. Authorities initially believed they would need to rehabilitate her just like the two boys, as she was considered a victim as well. However, after only a few days in the shelter, Anna escaped through an open window. When the police discovered her absence, they feared she had been kidnapped by her captors. A massive search effort was launched to find her, involving hundreds of officers, helicopters, and police dogs. As the search intensified, Edward continued to monitor the baby monitor at his home and was shocked to hear Anna's voice. Meanwhile, a letter arrived at the police station from Anna, claiming that her mother Clara was innocent and that Andrej and Jacob were lying about their abuse. The police were skeptical. They recognized that the letter's grammar and language were far too sophisticated for a 13-year-old girl. Realizing they needed to find Anna quickly, authorities plastered her picture everywhere. Days later, someone recognized her photo and contacted the police, revealing that the girl in the picture was not a 13-year-old but actually a 33-year-old woman named Barbara Skrylova. The police were initially taken aback by this revelation but soon confirmed it through DNA tests comparing samples from Anna with those on file for Barbara. This shocking discovery led the police to publicly announce they were searching for Barbara Skrylova rather than a missing child. They shared details about the child abuse case and the cult's involvement, captivating public interest. One major newspaper in the Czech Republic even offered a reward for any information leading to her whereabouts. Despite these efforts, Barbara seemed to vanish without a trace for 7 long months. However, her luck was about to run out. It turned out that she had fled to Norway, where she adopted yet another false identity, this time posing as a 13-year-old boy named Adam. After escaping from the children's shelter, Barbara managed to track down cult members who helped her obtain a passport under this new identity. Once in Norway, she enrolled in a boarding school where she continued her deception for several months. Although some people at the school noticed that Adam seemed unusually mature for his age, Barbara managed to maintain her cover. Eventually, concerns about Adam's behavior prompted school officials to investigate further. However, before they could act on their suspicions, Barbara disappeared from the school. The authorities were notified immediately, leading to another extensive search for Adam. A picture of Adam circulated widely as law enforcement sought to locate him. Eventually, he was found in northern Norway, where authorities finally uncovered Barbara's true identity as Barbara Skrylova. After being found, Anna, also known as Barbara Skrylova, was deported back to the Czech Republic. The situation seemed surreal. How could someone manipulate so many people and evade justice for so long? With her return, all the key players in this tragic case were finally in custody. The trial commenced, and in a shocking display, Barbara appeared in court clutching a teddy bear and a children's book. Both Clara and Katerina faced serious charges of child abuse and torture, while Barbara was charged with child abuse and additional offenses related to her false identities. The 3 cult members who had been at the cottage were also present during the proceedings. However, Barbara's father, Joseph, the cult leader, had fled and remained at large. As the trial unfolded, it was revealed that Barbara did not have any mental health conditions that could explain her actions. There was no diagnosis that justified her elaborate deception or the abuse she had inflicted. This left many baffled. It was difficult to understand what motivated someone to commit such heinous acts. Clara and Katerina were both deemed competent to stand trial. When Clara took the stand, she broke down in tears, which frustrated many observers. Instead of taking responsibility for her actions, she attempted to shift blame onto others, claiming she had been manipulated by Barbara, Katerina, and the mysterious doctor. She expressed remorse but maintained that she was simply trying to do what was best for her sons. Katerina's testimony was equally perplexing. She defended Barbara, which left many questioning her motivations. She blamed Clara for everything that had happened. This accusation led to a heated moment in court where Clara stood up and shouted at her sister. Finally, it was Barbara's turn to testify. She adopted a childlike persona during her testimony, attempting to portray herself as an innocent young girl who hadn't done anything wrong. On the stand, she claimed that Jacob and Andrzej were the real problem and insisted they deserved the treatment they received. After all the testimonies were heard, all 3 women, Barbara, Clara, and Katerina, along with the 3 cult members, were found guilty on all charges. However, the sentences handed down were shockingly lenient given the severity of their crimes. Each cult member received only 7 years in prison for their roles in the abuse. Clara was sentenced to 9 years for torturing and neglecting her own children. Katerina received 10 years due to her significant involvement in manipulating Clara. But perhaps most infuriating of all was Barbara's sentence, just 5 years in prison. Many felt that she was the primary instigator behind the horrific events. She had orchestrated much of the abuse and manipulation throughout this entire ordeal. It seemed unjust that she would receive such a short sentence compared to others involved. As this tragic case came to a close, it left many questions unanswered about how someone could inflict such pain on innocent children, and how they could manipulate those around them into participating in such cruelty. 15 years after the trial, all 6 defendants in this horrific case have been released. It's infuriating to think that they are now free, walking the streets and living their lives, while Jacob and Andrzej will forever bear the scars of their trauma. The injustice is palpable. How can it be fair that those who inflicted such pain can move on while the boys remain haunted by their past? Barbara was released in 2012 and, true to form, changed her identity. She is reportedly living on a disability pension in an undisclosed location. Clara was released in 2013 and thankfully no longer has custody of her children. Katerina followed suit, being released in 2014, but not much is known about her current whereabouts. This case of the Mauer family is one of the most disturbing I have ever covered. I find myself at a loss for analysis. I can't fully comprehend why these events unfolded as they did. It seems Barbara was desperately seeking a parental figure and attention, but why did Clara go along with such horrific actions? And what motivated Katerina to support Barbara? There are unsettling rumors regarding the cult involved in this case. Some speculate that the torture of Jacob and Andrzej was filmed and distributed on the dark web for money, allowing other predators to watch and possibly participate in their abuse. While we don't want to consider such horrors, it's a reality that these things can happen. Authorities believe that the cameras set up in the cottage and cupboard were primarily for surveillance, but we may never know the full extent of their intentions. As we reflect on this tragic case, it's essential to focus on the victims, Jacob and Andrzej. After the trial, they continued to receive care from authorities and were eventually placed in the custody of their grandparents. They began reconnecting with their father more frequently, which was a positive step forward. The boys started attending school again and underwent extensive treatment and therapy. Reports suggest that Jacob and Andrzej made significant strides in their recovery. However, the psychological effects of their ordeal will likely remain with them for life. As they grew older, both boys decided to visit their mother in prison. In 2013, when Clara was released, 15-year-old Jacob and 13-year-old Andrzej chose to reconnect with her in an effort to establish some sort of relationship.